Okay. All right. I guess I'm here. It looks like I'm on. Well, howdy do there, neighbors. Happy Halloween. This is some Jamaica for the working man. Where's mine? Something's buzzing. Oh, yeah. That's not impotent. What's impotent is I'm here now. I come to you now at the turn of the tide. Something like that. Let's see. Well, I'm on the OSR subreddit, which is my default for when I don't really have other things. I don't have any other things going on. I think if you haven't followed the channel, I posted. Hey, Mayor Trumpet, thanks so much. I posted a hex map, and I meant to do some hex keying on the behind the screens channel, but the week just kind of got away from me. I'd done some work on it. I think I sent a couple of hex keys. Yeah, like yesterday. It's been fun. You know what I realize is I'm sending this out for troop because that's kind of my thing, my default now. But things beget things, right? So I haven't really done kind of a bestiary. I don't have any creatures set up. So realizing as I started to hexcade out that, man, I need to have a list of creatures. I need to have some creatures to pull from. I mean, not that I don't, but I'm doing things a little bit differently with this. So I want to, I guess, curate. Hey, Ian, I want to curate things a little bit, but I also was thinking that it's kind of nice to have a bunch of critters. I guess one of the other things I'm thinking about, and we'll see if I'm able to follow this through in any kind of systematic way, is for thinking, why are creatures there? No, maybe why some creatures are the way they are, or is there a reason? So one of the things I think I like, right, in terms of creatures, because they just work, is your sort of giant creatures. You don't just have beetles, you have giant beetles. And of course, that makes sense for a couple reasons. A normal beetle. Well, good morning to you, Mayor Trumpet. Thanks so much for the gift membership. And I guess you're already November 1st, so you are a month ahead. Is this concept of kind of the gigantic version of creatures, which of course, like I was saying, makes a lot of sense if you're fighting a beetle. Even the biggest beetle, not that big at the end of the day, unless it's got some kind of crazy poison, right? It's not a threat to man. So you go, well, giant beetle. But one of the things I've been wanting to do, or that I have been doing with some of the things I've been doing in terms of creatures, is doing that bit of world building around, well, like I have, I'm doing something, I want to say my own take, but, do something a little different, we'll say, like your elves kind of thing. And so thinking about, well, why are these elves the way they are? What are these creatures and kind of why are they the way they are? But I was thinking to also extend that to some of the other monsters. So if we have giant, dire wolves, like, is it just the way wolves are? Is that just wolves? Or is it just another breed or subspecies or whatever, a family of wolves or dire wolves, or are they dire, enormous for a reason? Are giant beetles they're just out there, or does something make them giant? They eat those strange vegetables from that one episode of Gilligan's Island that makes everything radioactive and also 10 times their normal size, something like that. But it's meant that I don't, as I was starting the Hex King, it's meant that where's my list of creatures? I don't really have it. I mean, I could just make them up as I go, but sometimes it's also nice to think about, well, let me, because I think the first thing that I was thinking about was, let me just do like a quick little table of wandering creatures. And I was like, well, what would they be? What would they be? And why would they be? So I got to figure that part out. I might just do it as we go. Maybe I'll just use BX and then figure out what my analogs for some of those BX critters are, and then just swap them when I feel like, no, I don't really want that, or my conception of that is just very different from what Gygax, Arneson, Moldvay, Cook, and what they were doing. Ian says, I've been playing Hollow Knight Silk Song, and they must say that giant beetles are indeed a threat. Yeah. And the giant beetles in the kind of BX are pretty neat. Yeah, the oil, yeah, there's some like the oil beetles, and there's this one of tiger beetles. I don't remember. There's some cool things in there. They're just kind of I don't even know if some of them are kind of given sort of a naturalistic explanation. I was thinking like the giant water termites. The Gygax, or I guess via Moldvay, gives a little bit of a, oh, well, this is how they work and this is what they do. It's like, oh, it's kind of cool. But I also think about if there's a world where all these you think about in when this stuff tends to turn up in real world. I don't know why I'm using quotes. Like you find these fossilized. I think it was that wasn't Madagascar. I don't remember where it was. Might have been Madagascar, but these island environments. You'll find interesting things happen on these islands. Where they'll go and they'll say, like, oh, in this small island, there used to be in the prehistoric era, there used to be elephants, but the elephants are small, and then these other things were huge. Right, that what I guess famously, somewhat the hobbits, was Homo floresiensis, I guess, on an island, and they were small. So you get this thing with some of the creatures get bigger than they would off the island, and other creatures get small, having to do with, obviously, if you're on an island, you don't have enough resources to support a population of African or Asian elephants as they are. But if they get smaller, then you can. So those get smaller. Then maybe some other predators get bigger. Interesting things happen with these kind of environments. But we're not, the game doesn't take place on an island. So if we have something where all the swamps are filled with giant termites and all this stuff with these horrific beetles, but people are still just 5 to 6-ish, 6.5, let's say, feet tall, more or less. It's a little bit like, well, why haven't these beetles, not the British invasion beetles, but why haven't these beetles and all these other things just completely overrun humanity, given everything? But if they're more of a recurring but special case, like there's a let's just say there was some kind of weird magical kind of quasi radioactive effect, like if we're gonna have ley lines or something, and there's some parts of the world where this ley energy, this magic energy comes, most of the time it's somewhat insulated, maybe by the fact that it's deep underground or whatever. And of course you can play around with, well, if these things are really deep underground, then what does that say about dungeons and kind of a mystic underworld? Maybe you do get weird things happen down there because you're literally closer to this pulsating magic energy, which is another neat idea. But the other thing is maybe you have these parts where there's, like, you might have a geyser or some kind of we would call it kind of tectonic activity, but it's not molten whatever, it's magic kind of stuff. And does that supersize some of the critters and stuff that are there? And then I think these are interesting things. I think it's neat. I think they're neat things, but they're also things that you kind of need to think through, or at least you want to think through a bit. And that can then, and you just, at least I do, I start going down this path, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, I need to think of that. Like there's this like you're on the highway of, all right, I'm getting this done. And it's like, nope, I got to take this off ramp to stop over here and then circle back to go to, what is the reason for giant beetles? How does that work? And then I can circle back on the on ramp. Things will figure it out. And that's also why I keep saying, like, I'm going to start this solo game soon. And I keep thinking, but I need a bestiary kind of thing. I need this, I need that. And then a couple of people were just saying, well, you just do it. And I might just do it. And I'll just make stuff on the fly and then think about the reasons why, whatever. And I do think that as a shortcut, I will probably use maybe the BX wandering creature tables or something like that, just to use there and then figure out where when I don't, in the absence of having an idea, basically. But that is neither here nor there. But it's been on my mind. It's been something I've been puttering around with. I'm on the OSR subreddit, as I think I mentioned at the top. And, we'll see what's going on. We'll see what's going on Halloween. Surely there must be exciting things afoot for Halloween, right? Maybe? What is that? Kokotona. The premier Mesoamerican Borg-like. Okay, there's an interview. All right. Yeah, I'd like to see a nice, hey, Mr. Goats, welcome aboard. I really would like I don't want to say cool. I'd like a really interesting Mesoamerican setting. with obviously input from people who have connection to that. And I'd like it to look. I don't think you necessarily have to ignore aspect. I wouldn't want to say, look, don't ignore the fact that they're, and especially something like Mort Borg, it kind of fits, because my understanding, which is not super amazing, right, of sort of Aztec and Mayan, though I don't know, maybe I don't know much of, I don't know the Incan particulars, but this idea of kind of holding off the apocalypse. How are we doing that? By giving our gods a nice diet of blood, right? That this is how and in that context, if you really believe that if we don't do this thing, the world is ending, it makes sense why you would need to do it. It's got to be. I mean, it seems like it's probably got to be something more than that, because how much God, how much, that what's that line from the Star Trek 5? Why does God need a starship? You think, well, how much blood does a God need? I mean, you could say there's never enough, or you could say, oh, it's maybe enough, or, but because that stuff seemed to be where at some point, but maybe they thought like it was literally the end is coming. So we better, we can't just hold to a number. We got to keep escalating what we're doing because the end of the world is escalating in turn. I'm not sure. I don't think you need to avoid it, but I don't think it needs to be the thing. And the slavery issue and slavery in terms of kind of what to do with, well, I guess they didn't really use slaves too much. I don't know. My understanding, it wasn't really a slave driven thing, though maybe it was. I don't know, but just the captives kind of thing. But I don't think, I guess what I'm thinking is like the captives. I said slaves first. I don't think slaves is the right word. Captives is the right word. I think it would be a mistake, though, to make that the central pillar. It just to be all about taking captives and doing that. Like, I think I would want to find a middle ground between, this stuff is there. It is part of the culture, and I want to. And it was obviously very meaningful, and it was very important. However you want to frame it, but I wouldn't want to make it like that as a thing, because I think there was something else that came out and something that really turned me off. I don't remember. It was like your whole currency was taking captives and sacrificing them, and I'm like, and maybe that is accurate. I don't know, but I wouldn't want that to be the central concern. I don't want to be XP for human sacrifice, if that makes sense. Meyer Trump mentions Macahuitl. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't read that one. I don't know. I think that might have been the one, though, that I wasn't. That they seem to really go full bore on the like blood at the center of things. I remember that was from I heard it in an interview. I think it might have been on. I think it was on Jason's RPG Variety Cast. Had an interview with Basic Expert about that, and I wasn't thrilled with that. I don't know what I would do, and I'm not in a position to write my own, so I don't know. But I don't want it to. That's just, I don't want my game to be about that, I guess, is ultimately like that's not a game I'm interested in playing. So it would be great if there was human sacrifice gets XP. Yeah, I'm not interested in that, Meyer Trumpet. That's not for me. I think it's fine to acknowledge it, to have it there and whatever, but I just don't want my game to be about that. So who knows if Kokotona will take a different tack on that? I don't know, but I think that there's it just, to me, it just ends up taking something that's has a people culture that's multidimensional and squeezing it down to one thing. And it's human sacrifice. That's it. And I don't know. There's a lot more. There's a lot more there, I think. So it would be a cool thing to look. It would be. I'd love to do some. Maybe that'll be something I'll have to do, like a series of doing kind of reading stuff and looking at some of these, just reading about these different cultures and the scholarship and looking at, not necessarily trying to say like let's make the fantasy Aztecs, but just like, hey, this has got some cool stuff that we can just read and just be inspirational in a more broad sense. All right, a look inside of, I don't know what that is. Looks like a micro. What is that? Like, it looks like a shrunken down book. Okay, this Halloween. All right, okay, let's get down to POD of Radical Kids. Don't know. Pseudo historical medieval Europe. TLDR, me and my group want to run a human-centric, semi-realistic, medieval, dark horror, low magic fantasy sandbox for Shadow Dark. Oh, supplements. Okay. All right. Don't know. All right. Let's see. This is, I just have found lately, actually not even really that lately. I found lately that just Reddit, you're failing me, Reddit. It's not Reddit's fault, and it's not people's fault. I'm just not as interested in some of the things that people in these forums tend to be interested in. How do I determine scale? No. Is there a generic universal version of BX? Maybe. I don't know. 50 card Oracle deck. Kind of cool, but it's not really something to read. Roll to hit versus. Okay, here we go. This one might be good. So this is posted by Scotty Behoy, 1977, a couple hours ago. Roll to hit versus armor reducing damage query. Not sure if I can explain this clearly, but I'll give it a go. I'm developing a basic OSR-inspired system where the roll to hit is a d6. That roll can be modified slightly depending on environmental or other factors decided in the moment. It's a success on a 4 or above and a failure on a 3 or below. The damage is a d6, modified by whichever weapon is being used. As I won't be using AC, but do like the idea of different armors making an impact on damage sustained, I'm wondering if the system would benefit from the damage roll being modified again, depending on the armor worn. For example, Dave rolls 4 from a d6 and hits, rolls another d6, gets a 4, adds 1, as he's using a short blade, so it conveys 5 damage. The target's wearing leathers, so that's reduced by 2, so we end up with a total of 3 damage sustained. Do the modifiers effectively cancel each other out and become meaningless? Is there a similar system already they can look at for this? Thanks so much in advance. I mean, okay, so it's just, do the modifiers effectively cancel each other out? Which modifiers? I mean, yes, obviously using a short blade against leathers is not a great weapon choice. I mean, I think the thing is, I guess it's really how you describe it. This system is kind of interesting because the main damage is weapon independent. And then you have this modifier. So I imagine if, let's say, short blade is 1, maybe you say I don't know how short the short blades are. Are those supposed to be, are those daggers or short swords? I don't know. Let's just say it's a short sword. So then you get to your kind of ye old long sword type, and then it's a +2, and then maybe say it's a two-handed, it's +4. There's some, because you get to express those, you can see how, okay, if I'm fighting a bunch of people in essentially light armor, this kind of leathers system, we're fighting leathers, then using a short blade type weapon, you're going uphill a little bit. Now you're always going to get average 4 points of damage on your hit, right? Because the average roll of 3d6 is 3.5. We rounded up to 4, so you're always going to get 4 damage. So basically, you're that 5 damage is your average with a short blade. So depending on how much health we're starting with, but you might look at it, that maybe that's good or bad. I don't know, but you're looking at it like, okay, if we want to be the most efficient, then if we're someone wearing armor, we probably want a heavier weapon. And I think that's a kind of that kind of relationship is good because I think it makes sense. Someone's wearing heavier armor. You want to, if you want to keep up in the arms race, you then want to use a heavier weapon. But when you're going with someone wearing little or no armor, then maybe a light weapon is better, especially if that light weapon may be easier to hit with. And you can have some fun with that, right? Oh, so the short blade, it only adds 1, but maybe there's a bonus to hit with it, or there's no penalty. So maybe say, okay, it's a plain D6 to hit. You're not penalized for the weapon, but it only adds 1 to your damage. But if you're using a two-handed sword, some kind of great sword, well, maybe it adds 4 to your damage, but it's -1 to hit. So your chances of missing are bigger. And of course, then you have classes and skills or whatever that even it out. So I think that can work fine. I mean, armor class it kind of works. I mean, I'm not using, I'm using armor, I'm using damage reduction in troop, but I think AC, it really works and it's kind of easy accounting because then it's just you have this number. You're like, do you hit whatever? It's like, yeah, or you miss. I think I don't know. I almost feel like sometimes it gets overplayed. That the I don't know. Maybe overplayed is not the right word, but I think it's pretty easy. You understand it to then say to narrate whether they just swing and a miss like a whiff, or whether they clank off the armor. And I think it's often maybe just laziness on people when they're describing hits and misses to talk about whether it was the armor that made the miss, or it was a glancing blow, but you caught on the glanced off the mail, or pinged off of their plate or whatever. But it's I think it's more, to me, it's not so much, okay, I'm using one system is kind of inherently superior. I think about, well, what are you doing with it? So if you're doing armor class, like, what are you doing with that? Or if you're using this other thing, what other, using damage reduction, like, well, what else is that? What else is going on? What are you doing? But it's fine. It is all fine. And people will adapt. If your systems, if people like playing your game, or you're saying people will, they'll roll with whatever you got going on. Okay, has anyone tried or planned to the Cyberdark quick start? No, don't know about Cyberdark. Okay, looking to run a Shadowrun game. Great. That's a nice map. Think of the Children. Urban fantasy dungeon crawl. Okay, so let's see what this one is. By Tertullianitis. OSE makes race plus class the default, relegates race as class to an optional rule. I thought this warranted a thread because I think it is by far the most significant change to old school essentials, and it wasn't even mentioned in the blog post about the 2026 edition. I see. I haven't read the blog post about the 2026 edition, but I did hear that they were, I guess, doing an update to OSE, but all right. Race as class, the way it works in BX, is an optional add-on now, not fundamentally different from adding in weapon proficiencies or secondary skills. Arguably even less so, as the actual rules for race as class are in a sidebar, not even in the main body of the text. How rude. From Gavin Norman on Necrotic Gnome Discord. Here's a quote from Gavin Norman. Yeah, the character creation steps are 2, choose a race, 3, choose a class, plus a sidebar about alternatively choosing a demi-human class. Yep, they're in a separate section now. Having them all mixed in with the main classes was really confusing. I chose race plus class as the default, as that is what the vast majority of players are familiar with, path of least resistance. Honestly, I think that's the only place where I had to choose to favor the BX or the AD&D approach. With everything else, it was just a case of noting something as an optional rule. But with character creation, you kind of have to go one way or the other while noting the other as an option. The separate basic character creation, advanced character creation pages in Old School Essentials, Advanced Fantasy was super confusing and not a solution I ever liked. Okay, and then we have opinion incoming from Tertullianitis. Opinion incoming. I dislike this change very much. At the risk of being called Chicken Little, I think this causes all sorts of problems. Vince Pale says lame. It was rewritten BX. Now it's just another mishmash. Well, I'll get to it in a minute. Let me just finish this person's opinion, and then we can discuss. And maybe if someone, maybe I'll have to post a link. Someone post a link somewhere, I can try to get to the original blog post. Okay, so Tertullianitis says, I dislike this change very much at the risk of being called Chicken Little. I think it causes all sorts of problems. First, now racist class is something that the referee must actively choose, and more importantly, must actively justify to the players. A player who wants to play a dwarf cleric can now ask, why are you going out of your way to make my character impossible? Why can't we just use the normal rule? Second, one of the most important services an RPG designer can provide to referees is to make the difficult or punishing or unusual choice default so that the referee does not have to take the heat for it. For example, make death at 0 HP the default because it's a lot easier to house rule more forgiving rules for dying than it is to justify killing a PC when the default rule says they should live. This change goes against that principle. I don't think that was ever the reason for them dying at 0. Was not about some kind of make that the more. That's a weird. So that's a weird take. 0 was just easy. This idea, just 0, you're dead. Like you run out of money, you're broke. No loans, just 0. It was just simple. I don't think it had anything to do with making a punishing the or unusual choice the default. That's a weird piece of logic in there, but we'll keep going. Third, in fact, OSC was the only major standard bearer for racist class. Its big competitor, Basic Fantasy RPG, doesn't use it. So this change will likely relegate racist class to a niche, unusual option across the OSR. As a fan of racist class, I'm naturally sad about that. That's fair. Okay. And fourth, presumably this change will be reflected in third-party and even first-party products. How many times will the players encounter dwarf clerics or elf rangers before they ask, why can't I play one of those? If pregens are provided for an OSC product, presumably they will use race plus class, again, adding another barrier for the use of racist class. And the fifth, most importantly, will the new OSC starter set even support racist class? I think this is unconfirmed, but I doubt it. We know we'll have pregens, which presumably will use the default rule of race plus class. So anyone who starts with a starter set will be strongly pushed in the direction of race plus class and habituated to getting both a race and a class. Hey, Croco. Call me a drama queen if you like. I get it, but I no longer consider OSC to be a retro clone of BX. Until this change, all the default rules in OSC were taken from BX, and anything else was an optional add-on, even in advanced OSC. With this change, that's no longer true. An absolutely core part of BX is now contrary to the default OSC rules. As an optional add-on, OSC is now a unique fantasy system, a hybrid of BX and AD&D, with some add-on rules taken from BX, some taken from AD&D. For me, that's very unfortunate. Ian says, sounds like a drama queen. Yeah, I think my big problems with the like Vince said it's lame. And I understand if you think it's lame. And this person, Tertullianitis, also thinks it's lame. But guess what? You can just buy BX. You can buy BX. I don't know, maybe at some point you won't be able to get OSC, or you'll only be able to get, I guess, secondhand OSC, because they're going to flip the switch to this one to just play with BX. I mean, there's so much material out there already. Why do we care? I don't care. I have my BX books. Where's my BX folder? Where's my BX folder? It's not where I can get it. I got BX. You can get BX. You don't need OSC. There's nothing stopping you from doing this. Like, it just seems like it's a. So I'm wondering, so what's the fear? I mean, like, really, what's the fear? There is so much OSR material, whether it's written for OSE, whether it's just written for BX, whether it's written for Lamentations of the Flame Princess, whether it's written for whatever. There's so much there. You don't need to ever touch anything published past now, or heck, 10 years ago. You got everything you need. And by the way, if you buy an OSC adventure and you flip through it and you're like, there's a dwarf cleric here, and you don't want it, so just change him to a dwarf or change him to a cleric. No one's gonna, I don't think anyone's gonna, then your players will be none the wiser. So the only reason you're running to an elf ranger is because you read that in the adventure and didn't change it to an elf, or didn't change it to a human ranger. Now, one thing I'll say, which I think is driving this a lot, is almost, I don't know, I feel like a lot of the time I see OSC stuff, it's people looking for options and people pointing them to do the advanced OSC. Oh, go to the advanced OSC, go to the advanced OSC. So I'm sure Gavin and the folks who are involved with this on a day-to-day basis have seen that I don't know if the tide has changed, the wind has turned, but that people are really, there's more driving towards having separate racist class. And if you're going to have a lot of people who want that anyway, and you want to kind of integrate together, not have separate books, you just pick one. So they picked the one that probably is more, I don't know, it just maybe more popular right now. Because I mean, I'm fine with race as class, or I usually call it species of class. I'm fine with that. But the other way is fine too. I don't have a problem. I mean, we go back and forth from AD&E to BX, and like we had that back in the day. I mean, talking about like this is something new. Like, oh, I can't believe it. They went from. I mean, I can't believe that back in 1981 that they had the advanced, and it's like it's fine. I have not. Crocodiles are looking at Maze and Mentor. I have not looked at that yet. It's on my list. Vince says it's a minimal change, but it was nice having OSC's official Foundry module, which replicated BX almost exactly. Vince, I don't know that they're going to get rid of it. I imagine if you want to do the BX method, there will be options there for you. I like that. They're not chucking you into the fire pits. I don't think. Now, I could be mistaken. And I don't know if I don't play on Foundry. I've never played on, I don't know Foundry. I don't know if that's an official module or if it's unofficial. If it's unofficial, maybe they can just fork it and say, here's original just BX, and then here's 2026, or maybe they'll just have two modules. I don't even know when OSC's official. Here's OSC Classic. Here's OSC 2026. So I think it's okay. I think we're fine. This idea that this number 2 is the weird one for me. Important services a designer can provide to referees is making it difficult or punishing or usual choice default. Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I guess since I made my own system, I can call myself an RPG designer now. And I'm going to say that's something I never think about. I don't think about, gee, let me make the most difficult or punishing choice default or one that's unusual. No, I want to make the one I think is the most interesting or fun. No, I don't know where that would come from. No, I don't. Who does that? Like, I could make this. What's the most punishing result? Let me make that the default so that you can house rule an easier one if you want. I don't know what is going on, but Vince says bad DMs hide behind rules. Yeah, that's probably true. I don't understand that one at all. I don't know that makes any sense for anybody. I have a hard time believing I'd be able to find a reference or somebody saying, no, really, RPG designer, you made this so that it doesn't, I don't know. They didn't make 0 easier so that you could house rule easy. They made 0 easier because it seems it's the most logical choice. What happens when you get to 0 hit points? You die. You have no health left. So what, and then, yeah, like other methods have come up and everything like that, but like they didn't do it so that like now you can house roll an easier one. I mean, that would be wacky to me if a designer said, I designed it like this so you can house roll other ways that are better than this. No, stop that. That sounds inane. It just, I wait somebody to explain that in a way it doesn't sound like insanity. Vince says it sounds like he's afraid of his players. Yeah, and the thing is too, it's like I'm okay. This is what I don't understand, and I mean, it's been a long time now, but I did a whole video on. Look, I look at this races class, species class as an invitation. To me, it's not. Well, these are the only 4 there are, and these are the only 4 there ever shall be. It's no. These are these kind of opening gambit archetypes. But when I run a game, the first thing I do is, well, what do people want to play? And I'll create something to play. If I'm running a BX game and someone comes to me and goes, well, you know what? I don't really want to be I want to be a dwarf cleric. I'll make them a dwarf cleric. I don't understand this idea. Like, now they'll want something that is not part of the original 4 options and therefore it should not exist. Like, no, I mean, where's that quote? I should just keep that quote from Gygax on like a sticky where it says like, hey, whatever players want to be, as long as you can make a reasonable progression, they could basically start out weak and then progress something strong, then do that. Like, that should be the golden rule of this stuff. Not, I don't even know what this other version is. No, I only want these 4. I mean, yeah, I guess, sure, but that to me is not in really the spirit of what it is. And the reason why they had this racist class thing to begin with it was just to simplify, because OD&D had some kind of, it was just a little bit loosey-goosey, and it just didn't, there was the stuff with the elf, and like, oh, you had to choose every time you went adventuring. One day for this adventure, you choose to be a wizard and you go off like a wizard. This adventure, you choose to be a fighter and go into a fighter. And it's just kind of clunky. And they're looking at it and like, well, you had all these restrictions on what you could do. And then this thing was kind of clunky over here. And you say, well, hobbits can only, dwarves can only be fighters, and they can only go, hobbits can only be fighters. Elves can do this fighter wizard thing. Okay, so let's just simplify that and do that. But in some alternate universe, if they had done something different, they could have. They didn't. There wasn't this philosophical. I think happens. I think happens all the time in the OSR space. Okay, you take things that were done for very practical reasons back in the day, and then they take that and we forget about the practical part of it, and then we say, what kind of philosophical ideal were they trying to hold up by having, look, they did it in these really slim books, only 20 pages, so everything should just be 20 pages because they believed that brevity was the source of wit. And it's like, no, that wasn't it. It just was limits because they were a really tiny company and they wanted to get it out fast and they did the cheapest kind of thing. It's like that it was just that's why. Like they wanted to. I mean, I've read that article, that guy, our letter to the editor, the guy wrote, where we talked about they meant for OD&E to put out all kinds of books, and they did. We just don't really think about them. In fact, hold on a minute. Come on, teddy bear. I found these cool holders at one of these Japanese kind of everything sort of stores that are great for holding kind of, I guess, A4 kind of things. And if I unzip this one, so I don't have to keep beating up my one white box that I have. I think this was, so we had, so we start off, Men and Magic, Underworld and Wilderness Adventures, Monsters and Treasure. Then we got, Greyhawk, Blackmore. There's Sword Dispels, not exactly an add-on, but kind of, is it even set up? It's not really set up as a supplement. It's just kind of there. It's kind of on the side. And, Eldritch Wizardry, Gods, Demigods, and Heroes. And I think in some, again, another one of these alternate universes where maybe Gygax and Artisan get around more and there's less of the no fighting and stuff, they might have kept churning this out, as they were. It was not that they saw some, oh my gosh, we gotta keep it short. And the same thing with BX. BX was supposed to be what Beckme became. They were meant to continue going in that vein, but just, I don't know all the reasoning behind it, but it just stalled out. And so then they did it again with Menser. So they kind of had BX in a sense was a false start. Oh, we did basic, we did expert. And what happens? I don't know. Moldvay, you're out, or whatever happened. I don't know the circumstances of why he stopped doing it, but you're out. All right, Moldvay Cook gone. Hey, Menser, you're in, and we're going to start over again. So do another B, do another X, do E, and then we'll do these rest of them. All right, and then we'll do the rules cyclopedia. But because BX kind of got, I mean, in some ways it's lucky because I love BX, and it was kind of the game of my youth, and it kind of became the sort of standard bearer maybe the sort of object that OSR sort of gathered around. So it's great for me personally because I have such appreciation for it just on my own. But it just so happened that one got stuck at those 2 volumes that ended up being pretty slim. So I was like, ooh, but it wasn't done. It wasn't like, yeah, this is the perfect length and we get it. Like, Edgar Allan Poe had a lot of, he had reasoning. He wrote essays on why poetry should, and stories in general should be short and you should be able to digest it in one sitting. And he had very powerful reasons for that. So you read an Edgar Allan Poe story, it was constructed for that purpose. Whether you like it or not, he had a reasoning for it. But these other things, that's not what these books are. These books were written in a way in just in the flow of commerce and things happening and just life. And, generations later, they're unearthed and it's like, oh, they must have had this ideal. No, they didn't. So it's not a sacred thing. We treat them now as some kind of sacred thing, but none of these things were sacred. And if they would have had another way, or maybe they had more time or something else, then they might have done it another way. They also were trying to, one of the things with BX in the name basic is they're trying to simplify things. So yeah, it's easier to pick a dwarf than to do a dwarf and then a class. But we don't, for a lot of folks now, that's not a big deal. We're adults, we're playing, right? We're in a world now where the idea of a dwarf is a lot different than either in like 1970, whatever, where your thinking was probably either Tolkien, maybe Norse myths, probably, but it's either between Tolkien and Snow White. And so you have essentially there's only one kind of dwarf that's running around, so it makes sense that there's just one kind of dwarf in the game, but we're not in that world anymore. And OSE reflecting that in 2026 should not be breaking your world. Because, by the way, you can just go buy BX. Just go buy BX. I know giving Wizards money, but, I don't know how much they make from a sale of whatever, $4, $5, $8 that they charge on drive-through for it, but you go get BX. They can't take it from you. It's all good. But I understand being a bummer because you want to see your preferred version kind of still have sort of this front. Hey, it's still there. It's an OSC, and it's still. But and someone else will probably come up, and they're not even. I don't know if OSC was the only one that had racist class, but if they were, maybe someone else will be inspired to. Heck, maybe Tertullianitis will be inspired to say, "No, I'm going to make my own retro clone now. I'm bringing it back, old school, new school, middle school, high school, drama school." Anyway, that was fun. All right. Okay, let's see if there's any good blogs. Let's see. Conquering convention. Oh, here, this might be good. Theoretical ideas on initiative. But yeah, I love BX, but we've had BX for how many years and we'll have it still. Like, it's not going anywhere. BX is fine. All right, I'm putting in case you want to follow along at home, putting this in the chat. Okay, when initiative matters. It's posted by the Metal Bard, a TTRPG enthusiast who likes to examine and develop content. Okay. Seems kind of cold and clinical byline. An enthusiast who likes to examine and develop content. All right. Initiative matters when there's a risk. If combat only lasts one round, going first is a massive advantage. Accordingly, the longer combat extends, the less important initiative becomes because results will eventually average out. Recently, I had a session where this was more perceptible. Cargo says they always want to take a look at the Hackmaster initiative rules. Oh, I haven't really looked at them. I have some Hackmaster books in hardcover, but I don't think I've ever really checked them out too much. So maybe I need to do that. All right, back to the blog. Right now, I'm testing a deadly combat system. I mean, deadly. Combats usually last 1 to 2 rounds, and I like it that way. The characters won most initiative rounds and used their resources to attempt to dispose of as many enemies as possible before the enemies got a response. This was effective. It mitigated the damage they accumulated, but it costed resources. Having realized the importance of winning initiative, especially against necromancers and cultists, the players even consumed metacurrency to turn failed initiative rolls into successes. To understand this a bit better, I must tell you that our metacurrency, called Divinity, can be used to influence rolls on a one-to-one basis, a la DCC luck. But in our case, it is also the roll under target number to stay alive at 0 health. Each of the characters currently at around mid-level has about 2 to 4 divinity points. While during one of the initiative rolls, all players lost initiative and 2 of them used the divinity to turn that failure into a success. A precious resource was consciously used and a risk assumed because initiative mattered. Fast forward 2 combat encounters later, players lose initiative again. This time they don't have enough divinity to turn it into a success. Character gets hit with a kill spell, and without getting too much into the mechanics of the spell, the player is 1 divinity point short from preventing the character's death. Norf, the Dwarven Knight, gets melted. A simple session, but an interesting lesson into the underlying ramifications of initiative. I saw in a more tangential way that the value of initiative scales with the risk. Higher risk, higher importance for initiative. And when initiative matters, the players engage with resources or otherwise in the outcome. This may seem self-evident, but I never consciously recognized it in this way until now. Design considerations. I think this example can provide a perspective for how to gauge the needs of an initiative system. If the game is low risk, initiative should be considered to be either extremely simple, limited to the highest risk part, or ditched altogether. If the system is high risk, initiative can provide another layer of interesting interaction with the rules. Although I don't think that a high-risk system should inherently have a more complex initiative system, I think it would be more justified than for a low-risk system. One way to gauge how much risk the system has can be to measure the amount of turns that it takes to resolve the gameplay loop relying on initiative, such as combat. Combat is quick because characters and monsters can be killed in a hit or two, then initiative is important. If combat is lengthy, then the results will naturally average out and an initiative is of lower importance. Think of rolling 1d20 versus 10d20. The result of 1d20 is impossible to predict, but the result of 30d20 will confidently be within an average of a standard curve. Central limit theory, anyone? An exaggerated example, but I hope you get the point. Of course, this is only one consideration regarding the design value of initiative. All right, so let's see. Krako says, I guess going to Hackmaster maybe? Probably too complex to easily steal, what with having to give every weapon action rate or however that worked. Oh, I see. That's kind of the ADD method of the sort of because of weapon speed sort of thing. Krako also said the more dangerous the enemies, the more important having initiative. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I think it's an interesting system. I think the one thing you just want to be aware of is when you're coupling things together, and I think you kind of want to make sure they make sense in some way. So you have this. If you have a meta currency, I'm guessing this divinity, this meta currency can be used on many things, and they're just using it, spending it on initiative. It's probably not a one-to-one. It's either helps you live or gets you more initiative. Imagine you use it for multiple things. But if but I'd want to make sure if it wasn't something where, hey, you can use this on any number of roles and just initiative happens to be one, that by making it, does it make sense? Does it make sense that you trying to be a twitch faster makes you more killed more easily, kind of thing? But again, if it's kind of a global system, then it's fine. I mean, it's all fine. I think that, it's also that it comes down to the different issues. Are you rolling every round? Are you rolling just for once the turn of combat? Yeah, how long are your combats lasting? Though keep in mind, the limiter, the thing that makes combat lengthy is usually not the number of turns, it's usually how long each turn takes. Because I think even in something like 5e, it's not that 5e combats run 30 turns or even 10 turns. They probably don't run 5 turns. It's just that each one of those rounds, each one of those rounds consisting of 5 player turns, let's just say, plus however many monster turns, each one of those takes what could be considered, depending on your vibe, an inordinate amount of time. So it's not that you're running, I don't think there's any system out there that's going to run you enough rounds of combat to kind of get to the mean of a D20, of a D6, D20, whatever roll. It's only going to be 4 or 5, at most 4 or 5 times. So it's still going to have a high randomness. We're not, if anyone's running 30 rounds of combat in something, I don't know, maybe maybe in one of those Critical Role campaign finales that's like an 8-hour combat, maybe they get to somewhere near there. I don't even know, but it's not something you're going to be getting into. But yeah, I think it's a neat idea. I wonder did they plan it that way, or did they just say, hey, you can modify your roles using your meta resource, and they just found their players were using it to initiative? Because it is a good idea, because if you go first, you can eliminate an enemy before it can potentially eliminate you. So initiative can be very important. Yeah, especially in more deadly systems. If they can't really hurt you too bad, then yeah, you probably want to save that resource for something more vital, I guess. Cargo says maybe a cleric versus cleric mass battle. Yeah, I don't know. But it's a cool idea. Thank you, the Metal Bard. All right, on alignment, part 2. Well, I'll skip that one. 2 for of D6 to 6 tables. I'm not into. I don't want to just read some tables. Oh, let's see. Can someone help me find a compromise for players in OSE? Oh yeah, I actually read this one earlier today, and that one was more about just retainers. One of the players wants to get into domain level stuff, but nobody else does. So kind of how do you balance that out? I mean, there's probably some interesting ideas there. I think in terms of, some people mentioned just run domain type play with that player separately. And then look, in modern day, if have them run their domain on Discord or somewhere, forum, even text messaging. Open up a messenger or something and just run some domain stuff for them and have them do their retainers. Do some stuff like that. I mean, in the party part of it, if they want to run like in the adventure with the party and a bunch of retainers, it just becomes unwieldy. Or not really, unwieldy is not the right word. You end up dividing your experience a lot because those retainers eat up shares of experience. So if you're okay with that, I guess the other players are not okay with that, which I get it, because it's like, is them being around worth the fact that we're losing shares of XP? I don't know. But yeah, you just run, let them get their domain stuff on the side. And that can be a whole other part of the game, could be even almost a whole different game. What is this? Last chance to back Portal to Adventure Kickstarter. I don't know what that is, but it looks like a lot of stuff. What is it? I'm kind of curious. Emperor's Choice Games and Miniatures have teamed up with Matthew Tapp, Barrows and Borderlands, and Griffith Morgan, Fellowship of the Thing, to bring you an amazing bundle of great old school gaming products in one box. This is a celebration of teamwork to bring you. Okay. What is it though? What's this say? So we got Barrows and Borderlands, which I've heard things about, but I don't know it. Because I got a bunch of Barrows and Borderlands stuff, and then some Arden Grimoire stuff. Okay. Some maps. It's kind of cool, I guess. Fair enough. It's got, okay, so yeah, here we go. So here's what's inside of it. Multiple critical hit and fumble tables. Yeah, it's not a selling point for me, pal. 90 plus critical miscast possibilities. Yeah, that one, no. 3 variant brawling systems. Nope. Alternate dueling rules. Nah, not really. 21 different planes of hell. I must sound like a cranky old man. No. Lasers and time travel. Nope. Rules for aliens. Nope. Cross-universe lore and gameplay allows characters to travel anywhere in alternity. I don't care. No. It is a lot of hell. 21 different planes. That's a lot. I mean, are they all good? I know when a Kickstarter, some kind of thing, the big number good, right? Why write 20 when we can have 21 if that's possible? But at the same time, I'd rather 9, to use the classic D&D number, right? It's 9, isn't it? Right? That got a lot going for it than 21 that I'm going to run into and go, okay, well, some of these are not so great. The Abyss has 666. I don't think they're all detailed out. 5 dungeons with over 15 plus combined levels. That's a weird one, because that's not. Yeah, it's 3 levels a dungeon. And I imagine it can't be, they say 15 plus, it's probably something like 17, because if you could say 20, you probably would. But that's not, not that levels, I don't really care, like, the levels. It's not the amount of levels, the amount of rooms, but it's a kind of it doesn't even tell you how many rooms. It's an interesting, it's like, all right, 45 plus hex locations across Fearnum. It's just, I feel like I'm not the audience for this, I don't think. I have some Arden Grimoire stuff. Let's see, what do I have? Hold on, I'm just looking at this again. I have these. I think, well, no, I have this. I've got this. I've got these 3. In fact, I think, isn't that in this other? Because I pulled up both my little things. Yeah, so I've got, look at that. Welcome to Skull Towers right there. What have I got? It looks like they both say Volume 1. Are they 2 different things? Arden Grimoire Volume 1 and Arden Grimoire Volume 1. Don't they both say Volume 1? Yeah, so there's my welcome to Skull Tower. There's that one. I'm looking. This is funny. Just out of funny coincidence. See, what happened was I bought Arden Grimoire twice. And one of them was because it's just one of those things that I bought one, and then I really, I don't know how I ended up with it, but then I didn't have the other two books, and then I saw where I could get the other two books, but I had to get them as a 3-pack, so I just got 3, and I literally have the same 2 printings. I don't know. I never really even thought about if there's some differentiation between them. Just out of curiosity, let's see what's the inside. So first one here, where it looks like he's fighting a wyvern or similar, or I don't know, a smaller dragon. This one, let's just see. What is it? We have a forward. All right, this one says 1977, and it is no table of contents, really? No table of contents, 1977. Oh, table of contents on the back. 1977, I think, and it looks like 92 pages. And then this one, which has got the fighting in front of a door, also says 1977. Are they both? The thing is, it's like this is all kind of has a lot of homey stuff. Same forward. What's the table of contents say? Table of contents, 92 pages. Same dungeon at the back? Yep, looks like it. Slightly different drawing, though. Or they're different scans of the same drawing. Because one of them, they must be different scans. Looks like they darken the lines. So just if it matters at all, in the wyvern fighting one, in this map here in the back, some of the, like, there's a great cavern with a water source and things, and the water lines are kind of light. And then the same map in the fighting in a door version, they darken, the lines are darker. But I don't know if that's, I don't know. I don't even know what's different than them. I'm not sure why do you want 2 of them? I mean, I got 2 of them kind of happenstance, and I'm obviously happy to have them. But I wonder why they're showing 2 of them. Because aren't they the same book? I mean, all intents and purposes, they look exactly the same. But now it makes me want to look up and see is there a difference? What is the difference? Okay, that's fine. So going back to this list, and I don't mean to be grumpy old person. 800 pages is a lot. That's good. 35 plus character classes, 65 plus character races. Well, don't tell that BX, don't tell the OSE grumpy guy that there's that many races and classes. He just might explode. 130 plus character mutations. All right, that might be kind of cool. 300 plus monsters. All right, 250 plus spells. Okay. I mean, how much is, I mean, so the other thing here too, not to be a grumpy Gus, but the stuff that's just the reprints of Arduin, I mean, it seems like it's collecting together stuff that's already there, but I guess we're getting value. Out of curiosity, do I even want to know how much they're asking for this? Oh yeah, I'm in for a penny, in for a pound. All right, let's see. Okay, so they definitely made their goal by a lot. So it was only a 5,000 goal, but I think isn't that like, I guess that's a trick now. You don't really put the amount you really need, right? You put some lower number. I don't know. 284 people. Oh, only got 7 hours to go. 3 games by 3 publishers. So you get Arden Grimoire, Barrows in Borderlands, and Tonisborg. And then what's the dealio? So if you just want the PDFs, it's $30, which I think is very reasonable. So you get all 3 Arden Grimoire. You get the Barrows in Borderlands. And okay, but you don't get Tonisborg, I guess. So there's a box Arduin Trilogy. If you just want Arduin Trilogy as a box, you can get that for $85. And then it's $150, I guess, if you want the lot, which looks like it's the only way you get Tonisborg if you want Tonisborg. I'm kind of Tonisborg agnostic. I'm not, so, all right. Cool. If you like, I need to go back, and I was doing some reads of Arduin Grimoire, but it seemed like nobody cared but me. So I kind of faded away, but I'll probably go back to it at some point. There must be in maybe the Barrows and Borderlands stuff. I don't know. I mean, look, if you want, like, if it's a good, that $30 for the Arduin set, I don't know what the PDFs are going for in other places, but that's a good one. And I guess if you want a nice printed box, it's so hard for me to figure out, like, what's a good fair pricing for some of the stuff, because I just don't know on the print side. But if you want kind of a limited edition sort of box, I kind of would just like the box, because I got the books already. I wouldn't mind having the box to go with it, but maybe I can just make my own box. I want to get more craftsy anyway, so maybe I'll make my box and do that. But all right, so there you go. You can check out the Kickstarter. Oh well, 7 hours, but I'm sure there'll be. What's in the box? What's in the box? Yeah, don't know. All right, let's see. Maybe one last thing, because then I got to get to some Halloween business. All right, so the actual players. So I'm not going to click on this, but Glass Cannon folks I think they're in New York City, and I swear I had made social media contact with one of them ages ago. I'd love to talk to one of them, especially since they're starting Shadow Dark. I did kind of have in the background for a while listening to their session 0 of Shadow Dark, which I thought was pretty interesting. I really liked. I think it's really good to watch in terms of session 0ing, because I think they did. They talked about kind of like they went through really, I think, in a way that is almost the ideal, I guess. I mean, look, it's a show too, right? Okay, and they definitely discuss things off. A lot of things kind of like off camera, but they had I thought there was one of the nice elements. It's not interesting, or I found it interesting only because it's kind of showing this process of going through some of the Shadow Dark rules and things, saying, "Hey, do we want this? I'd like to do this." And they had a little back and forth, like, "Oh, what about, like, I don't know." And I'm not a Shadow Dark expert, but something like, "What about this kind of luck thing?" Like, "Oh, I don't really want to use it for this. Well, we'd like to use it for that." Okay, well, here's this middle ground, right? And they even talk, and there was a point where they go like, "Hey, how about a lemon law? Like, we'll try it, and if it doesn't work, roll it back," kind of thing. Like, okay, we'll try it. Or, "I'd like this, but I'm not sure about this." Okay, we'll do it this way. And they just kind of went through and did that. And I think it's just a nice, because you don't see that a lot. At least I don't think about it in terms of actual plays in these kinds of shows, where they go through their reasoning of, here's why we chose things they do, and you just kind of get to see them just talking it through. Hey, I think this would be good for that. I don't want it to overwhelm this, so we'll find this compromise of, okay, this will work. Go. One of the things I think is kind of interesting, and I don't know how it's going to play out, is they said something like, we're going to sit with these characters for a month and come up with all this backstory stuff. And if you know me, I'm not a backstory person. But that's fine. But what I wonder is, I just hope that they play, not that they have to play the game as written, but I hope that they don't, that it doesn't become a factor of, because I do think that when you ask somebody to, if you ask somebody to spend 5 minutes with their character and they lose their character, small investment, so maybe it hurts a little bit when you lose that character, but it's not a big deal. If you spend a month sitting with the character and doing all this stuff, then I almost think I wouldn't want to kill them off for it. I don't think it's fair. I think then you're asking somebody to spend, it's that, that you're asking them to invest a lot of time and then they last 30 seconds. So I understand in a system that puts a lot into character creation that there are some safety measures so that you're not asking someone to spend an hour going through character creation and then they die in 5 minutes. Like, just from, like, I get that, right? But one of the nice things in, say, something like BX is you're spending 5 minutes rolling up a character, if that. So then if your character dies 5 minutes later, no big deal. You can just roll up another one in 5 minutes and just wait for to get inserted back in the story. Okay. But I think you undo some of that if you then say to some folks, hey, really get into your character's headspace and blah, blah, blah. And then you die in 5 minutes. And I'll probably listen in on this a bit. I just would hope that as they're playing, they still don't, it's okay to shade the system however you want, but don't do it because of that. But they're an actual play, and obviously they want to do things. And I'll be curious to know if they go with some like, hey, in the beginning there might be kind of a body count because you're low level, it's easy to die and whatever, and then some characters will survive, and some characters may have to go through multiple, or some players may have to go through multiple characters. And then you get to where they got some experience under their belt and they got a little bit of power under their belt, and then you can kind of push more into like, okay, it's kind of these stories, and then moments of death, if there are any, then are going to be more dramatic just by the very nature. But I'm interested to see how they do with it. I didn't watch the whole thing, so I don't know if they are going to do the real time torch kind of thing. I remember 3D6 down the line, I think in theirs they didn't do it, and I kind of think if you're going to do Shadow Dark, they're not. I mean, there's a few things in the system, right? Roll to cast, I guess, is one of them, and then kind of the real time torches maybe is the other thing that really sets it apart. I guess there's the randomized character advancement, maybe would be the three things that sort of set it apart from just being kind of another sort of D20 fantasy game. So I'd like to see an actual play actually use all the things, and not because when I was listening to 3D6 down the line, because they didn't use you could forget that they were playing Shadow Dark, I think, and me anyway. I mean, oftentimes you can forget what system they're playing because it ends up being like, it's just D&D. We're not using it. We're using it. We're not playing D&D, trademark D&D, but it's D&D. So I'll be curious to see what they do. But I'm interested to give it a shot, and I'll have to see if I still have, because I'd love to. Maybe I'll have to see after they're done or something. Or maybe I wonder if someone's going to be at PAX. I can run into somebody and thrust a card into their hands and say, contact me. I don't know. I don't know if we don't run in the same circles. I'm not in the same echelon of YouTubery as they are. But, at some point it kind of becomes, we're playing D&D, and you can just kind of close your eyes and forget. So, like I said, I hope that they, some of that Shadow Dark stuff comes through. And it's really only because I want to see it in action. I'm not a Shadow Dark. I think it's fine. I don't have anything against it, but I'm not like, I want it. It's not for me wanting to glorify the system. It's just so, me, I think along with other people, I just want to see it. I want to see it. All right. Whew. Well, that was fun. Thanks for hanging out. It's Halloween. Happy Halloween. I'm going to go. I think my daughter's already exited to go do some trick-or-treating out and about. And I want to get out there because I got to come back to do some treat some trickers at our apartment. So I'm going to head out. Hopefully, for those of us who are not living in the future, like my ear trumpet, enjoy the evening, how much is left, and tunnels and trolls, something like that. Hopefully some trickers and treaters rather than tunnels or trolls. We'll see how the night goes. Anywho, I will catch everybody on the flip side. Game on. Talk to you later. Bye now.